One of the reasons that we wanted to have you back on, Mark, was earlier this week, the passing of Bobby Baun. And, we're at a time in not our lives, but in the generation of sports fans in North America, particularly, where many of the stars and the players of our youth are now passing away, and they mean more to us because we saw most of their careers on television. The guys that, the greatest players of times, and, we can talk about the Syl Lapses and the Ted Kennedys and all these guys that were outstanding players, but they don't mean as much to us because we never really watched them play on television. Yeah. But all those guys that started late 50s, early 60s, like Baun, made a huge impact. And, he was one of those guys when we were starting Leafs TV that you dragged into the studio to do a Maple Leafs Classic. We had no content, Paul. I don't know if you remember when we started Leafs TV. We had no content. So we invented content. And one of the things was to take old games out of the old famous Molson library and bring a player back from that game. And one of the guys, and by the way, they're all over YouTube. I don't know if you noticed this, Mark. They're all over YouTube.
They are. Absolutely.
And one of the guys that you were smart enough to bring in at that time was Bobby Baun. And because they liked the attention when they were in the 70s, didn't they?
Well, they didn't like the money we paid, so they had to like the attention that we were giving them.
We paid them a little.
We did.
You're going to make it sound like we were cheap.
No. But let me say one other thing to your point.
Thrifty.
Yeah, thrifty. So thrifty. So, Bob, if I thought of that Leaf team and the defense, it was always Baun and Brewer.
The team of the 60s. The team of the 60s.
The one that won
four Stanley Cups. Yeah.
Yes. Now the first three were won consecutively, 62, 63, 64. They had it's incredible to think that they had a fifth defenseman who rarely played, and that was Larry Hillman. Bobby Baun passing is the last of those five guys. They're all gone now. And I was looking up yesterday, and
hold on, you did research for this show?
Yeah. Proper preparation prevents blank poor
performance. No, you can say piss poor here.
No, I can.
Yeah.
Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance.
Yeah.
So
nobody's ever done research for. Hodge does research when he's on.
Of course he does. That's why he's Dave Hodge.
Yeah. Okay.
So all five of those guys now are gone, and Larry died in 2022. Alan Stanley died in 2013. And this is what got me thinking about this. Carl Brewer, was my favorite guest that we ever had, because Carl was blunt. And in his whole life, he was blunt.
Yeah.
But he died of sleep apnea 4 days after we recorded a show with him.
Wow.
And I have sleep apnea. And we would talk all about it. It was awesome. He was such an awesome guy. And then, of course, Tim Horton died in the 70s in a car accident.
Right.
But to think now that both goalies are now gone, and you're right.
Well, hold on, both goalies, all three. You mean all three goalies?
Sawchuk, Gamble.
No. It was Bauer, Simmons, and Sawchuk.
That's right. So my point is that generation. It's good we have the classic games. We would have never heard from these guys.
Yeah.
And I should probably tell a bit about how we got the footage, because the footage just didn't show up. In 1991, I got a call from a guy at the archives. Jonesy, you'll love this one. And he says, Mark, do you guys know that you have over 1,500 NHL games up here that have never been touched since the day they were sealed after the game was over on film? And I said, no, I didn't know. And he said, would you like to come up and look? And I won't say any names, but we had a boss who I went to him and he said, no, I'm not interested in that. I said, but what if we ever want to do videos? What footage we could have for our broadcast? No, I'm not interested. So I said, I'll go up on my own. So I went up and stayed at the Lord Elgin Hotel in Ottawa. And this gentleman met me, and he took me into a room at the National Archives. And in that room looked like a unlimited amount of 90-minute films. And
now you should explain
yeah, yeah,
that even though television was video,
correct, they recorded everything.
They recorded everything onto film, and in television in the 50s and 60s, it was called telecine.
Correct.
And so basically, there was a recording projector, a recording camera / projector,
correct,
that would record the video onto a film cell, which was, when you think about it, is so ass backwards now.
It is.
Compared to what you really think should happen. But that's
right.
That's exactly what, and that's one of the reasons why for so many years. Sorry to interrupt your great story.
No, it's good. It's good.
That's why for so many years they were always only recorded in black and white.
Correct.
Even though the games were in color by 1968, all of them in color by 68. Through the early part of the 70s, all the telecine chains were black and white.
So when I went up there, I said to him, nobody's like, where did these come from? And he explained to me that the network would record them.
Yes. Yeah.
They would send them to the team.
Only to the Maple Leafs.
Only the Maple Leafs.
Only Maple Leafs.
And they would look at the film. Then they would make notes, and then they'd give the film back to the network. And the network went, well, we don't have any need for this, so let's send them to the National Archives.
They would send them. The original guy they would send them to was Bill Galloway.
That's exactly right.
And Bill Galloway was a huge hockey fan, but with all the other things that Bill was doing in the archives, in the National Archives, he had no time to catalog any of the films that in those days between CBC Sports and the parent company of Hockey Night would send him. We in the late 70s we met Bill, because that's when I started working there, and Bill was one of those guys. He was just a hockey nerd. He loved the game.
Dick Irvin used to have him on in the intermissions
every once in a while. Yeah.
So when I went up there, he explained the process to me, and I said, nobody's looked at any of these, and I swear this story is true. And he said, you could come in and pick any 10 games you want, and we will dub them overnight for you to Beta SP, which was big at the time.
It's the format.
Archaic now.
Broadcast format.
And VHS. So I said, here's a list. And the first one I had on the list was April 23rd, 1964. And that's a playoff game.
That's a playoff game.
Game 6 of the finals, Toronto-Detroit. It's the game where Bob Baun scored the overtime winning goal early in the overtime. The Leafs were facing elimination.
Well, and that's when he came right out of the room and went onto the ice and scored the goal.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
So
that's what I read all the time.
That's called a lead-in, John. Well done. That's really good. Okay, so Jonesy, get this one. So I shortlisted all these games.
Wow.
And it was a summer project through Molestar, which was the company that produced all the games. And it took a summer, and they gave me a bonus for doing it. And it had 77,000 entries into the database. And I'm such a nerd, I didn't even need a roster. That is so pathetic. But it does tell you how much, when you loved your team, you knew that Don McKenney, when he was traded here, wore 17. And Andy Bathgate, John's hero, wore 9. And so I shortlisted them all. And when I was shortlisted, I was watching April 23rd, 1964. And I saw the MASH unit where Bobby breaks his ankle on the ice, and they take him off in a stretcher over their heads. It looked like Trapper John and from MASH taking guys out. Anyway, so they took him out, and then he doesn't show up again. But when I'm listening, I hear Bill Hewitt say, "Here's Baun over to Brewer." And I went, wait a minute, we're in the third period. So I thought, that can't be right. So I went back, and he was on the ice for 2 shifts at the end of the third period. I didn't say a word to anybody because I thought, I'm not going. People can see it later when it gets to air.
You're ruining the mythology.
Well, that's right. I am. I killed Christmas. So, Jonesy, I'm sorry I'm taking a long time.
But 2 shifts though, still
Yes.
some guys
with a hairline fracture.
Yeah, some guys get
today
heartburn and can't play.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. A hangnail, and I'm day to day.
I'm out 6 weeks.
Well, they're not baseball players.
No, okay, Johnny, jeez, not say any names. Andrew Jones in the Hall of Fame missed 2 games with heartburn. I mean, come on. Anyway, so then we get to Leafs TV, and we probably had the 1,500, and then CBC gave us a few. So I always said, and I think Johnny will agree with me, that was the greatest library in hockey history. It was then sold to the NHL, and they still have it. So it's all available.
Yeah. Well, see, and for any people that didn't understand, I mean, modern rights holders, modern issues, the NHL did not own any of its footage in Canada prior to 1994.
That's correct.
It was all owned by either the CBC or by Molson's.
Right.
One of the two. So one of the things that Gary Bettman's first administration did was find a way over the years to claw all this footage back.
And when Molstar,
disbanded,
right, the league bought that for X amount of $1 million because they knew they could have those gigantic.
Well, I tried to get MLSE to buy it. I tried to cut a deal when we were all there in the early 2000s. I tried to cut a deal that we would control the library, because wouldn't that be much more utilitarian of all that footage, and having a channel that needed content?
Big time.
We could do it, but we finally got what we wanted. So now you've got Baun in the studio.
So I got that game, and now he's coming. Okay, so then what we did was we decided we're going to bring the old time guys in, to watch their game. They will have watched it before we got there. So Jonesy, we'd say, let's say it was Bobby. So Bobby Baun, I'd phone him. I'm going to send you a VHS tape. Watch the game, because we're not going to show it when you're there. And we'll do an opening. We'll do some intermission stuff. We incorporated stuff from the original game. There it is. I said, but there's one thing I have to tell you. I've heard you tell the story that you hopped over the boards, right out of the dressing room, hopped over the boards and scored. And that was your first shift after you came back. And he goes, yes. And Bobby was so awesome. Like, he was just so great throughout all this. And I said, but that didn't happen like that. Now, we don't have to do it and say it, but the game is going to be broadcast in its entirety for the first time. And he goes, oh boy. I said, what? He said, what do I do? And I said, listen, we all have memories that we remember incorrectly. And so he went with that. And Bonesy was interviewing him.
That's Joe. That's Joe Baun.
Right. Sorry, Joe Bowen's interviewing. And
Mark's big into nicknames, if you noticed that.
Well, that's the truck. So he came on. He did a wonderful job. But as we were doing it, and as he was explaining it, I felt this horrible guilt of saying, I am killing the but legend. He was great. But still, to your point, he did have a broken ankle. Now, Alan Stanley, who came in to do a game, told me, and those typical old guys, right? He goes, wasn't that bad. He broke the smallest bone in his foot.
Yeah.